Okay, gang, welcome to the final class, final screenwriting class. Happy to report that every single one of you has a finished screenplay, right? Wonderful. Well, we have to stall for a little time because there's a few people, or two people at least that we know of who are coming, and I want them to participate in the read. But so in the meantime, I'll make the announcement once again that I made last Sunday at our final porch reading, which was about, work now that the class is done. At least class will be done in about 2 hours. And originally, we talked about that I was only going to have time to, pay attention to the work and respond during the class. And that's pretty much the case. In fact, this last week became pretty packed for me. But in talking with Randy and Danny and Jared and some of the other students afterwards, and due to the fact that some of you are so close to having a draft, but you're not quite ready yet, that what I'm going to do is allow you to send me up until a week from today, midnight. I'm going to do this just like I'm Saturday Evening Post and it's a contest. But until midnight next Wednesday night, if you can get something postmarked by then I'll read it and respond to the writing. After that, no guarantees at all, because I am anticipating being swamped. But I do want to be able to, give you as much feedback as you can so that you're ready to get these things wrapped up. And also, so there's our rule. Okay, there's our first real rule of the class is you've got a week now to get something to me. And after that, I'll be rude and just say no, fuck off. I'm busy. I'll do it in a German accent. Fuck off. Was that German? Sounded more kind of Thai to me, but anyway, so fuck off date is a week from tonight at midnight. And I request, the reason I want you to send it to me is because I'll be traveling a lot probably, and I want to be able to just carry it with me. It'll help a lot as I'm on trains or planes or whatever, that I can, also so that I can take very specific notes on the actual draft. So what I want you to do is send me a hard copy, and be kind enough to put a self-addressed stamped envelope in, so wherever I am I can just finish up, make my notes, and ship it off to you.
Richard, quick question.
Yeah.
I know Corey he's on his third draft. He's got like 146 pages. He's very close.
Yeah.
But he lives in Japan.
Yeah.
Can those who are out of state or out of country email them to you?
If you're out of the country, yeah. So I think Eli and Corey are both out of the country, so I'll allow them to email it to me, and I'll make a note to look for them, because that's the worry is two things: is if you email it to me, it'll get lost in the deluge of emails, and number two, it's harder to take notes and to get the notes back. So I vastly prefer the hard copy, and you'll benefit more from the hard copy because you'll have my actual notes on the page. And what I usually do is, at the back, I'll just the back few pages, I'll write out, a good number of notes, and that helps me do it more quickly than if I have to sit down. If I have to carve out time to sit down at my computer and go through and transcribe all of my notes, you see it. So even if you're in Japan or wherever, it's probably still better if you send me a hard copy, because you'll get better response, quicker response, more complete response. So. Okay, cool. What we're going to do today, we're going to read Danny's, the first several pages of Danny's screenplay. And as Danny figured out, so it was Michael's screenplay. We started this class reading Michael's screenplay during the first porch reading, and then we're ending class reading your script And that happened when?
It happened in the very first class 6 years ago.
Did it really? The very first class 6 years ago. It was Michael at the beginning and Danny at the end. Wow. Wow. It's.
Both times you all said my beginning dragged.
Your beginning drags. Well, hopefully your beginning will not drag. Now. All right, wonderful. Well, why don't we, Danny, go ahead and just cast Jana? Jana?
Yeah. Will you read Andrea?
Yeah.
And will you read Emily?
Yes,
Emma?
sure.
Will you read Hunter?
Sure.
Will you read Coombs?
Coombs.
Coombs. Michael, will you read Calvin? And will you read Jessica? And all right, and I'll just read all the
Incidentals?
nameless students. Let me just make sure I got everybody.
Okay, now Danny, you posted a PDF to the group as well,
Yes.
right? Okay, so they can read.
All right, that's it.
All right. Now, Danny did this the way that we always prefer, which is he brought hard copies for everybody who's here present. So I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning we talked about use them, write on them. You know, if you see a typo, circle it, cross something out. If you like something, put a little smiley face. If you don't understand something, you know, make a note so that you can make a comment about that afterwards. It's so helpful. And then we're all going to give our noted scripts back to Danny, and he's going to take them home and be able to have the time to go through. So that's really the best way to do it. And, oh, I remember what I was going to say before I forgot. So after class tonight, we won't officially be convening. However, I want to encourage you to do your readings, you know, when you have a draft that you feel confident about, to get on our screenwriting group and, you know, try to pull together a reading and talk to Michael where we've been doing our porch readings, and offer him a little stipend for the use of his facility. And by the way, I want to just say a great big thank you on behalf of all of us for hosting our porch readings. You have a fantastic facility for it, and it was just wonderful, so thank you. And yeah, so please, let's give Michael a call or contact him and arrange to read it there or anywhere else. Just get it, you know, get it done. Bring hard copies, let people take notes. It'll be a very, very valuable exercise for you. Okay, well, we're going to start, and Chad and Ann will just have to come in and get with it. Do you have a couple of hard copies ready for them when they walk in?
I've given all my hard copies out, so
Okay.
they can share with Michael.
Okay. All right, let's look at our title page. It's a work of beauty. Tomb of the Spaceman, an original screenplay by Danny Chadwick. It's got his copyright, his WGA, everything's nice and balanced, his contact info. We have a professional. We get to read the script of a professional. Okay, exterior space. A spaceship soars across the stars. It's small, 3 meters wide with finned wings and 4 transparent domes on top. Through the domes are 3 aliens. They're little rodents. They look like a mix between a porcupine and a hedgehog. They're all surrounded by control consoles with lights and buttons. The spaceship malfunctions. The engine stalls and the back of the ship explodes, violently jolting it off course. The aliens' consoles all flash red and furiously mash at their controls. Shedding debris, the spaceship careens toward a nearby planet, Earth. Exterior, middle of nowhere, night. The bright full moon and Milky Way illuminate a calm winter night over a snowy, heavily wooded valley surrounded by the Rocky Mountains. Guys, come on and join the table. And these guys will share their scripts with you. Okay, the first scene. We'll give you the update as you're getting settled. So there's a spaceship going through with little rodents, little half porcupine, look like half porcupine, half hedgehog. They're in a spaceship, and the engine explodes or stalls, and it jolts it off, and it sends it towards Earth. So that's the beginning. Okay? And now we're in the middle of nowhere at night. Central Montana, 1908. What appears to be a bright shooting star blares across the sky. It grows larger and brighter until it transforms into a blazing fireball. It smashes into the ground and a fantastic explosion creates a smoldering impact crater. The surrounding trees burst into flames. Exterior impact crater, night. All of the trees in a 50-foot radius have been completely vaporized. The fiery spaceship lies in the center of the clearing with its nose in the dirt. One wing is shredded, the other is a stub. The entire back half of the ship is gone. Fire consumes what's left of it. The 3 domes eject from the top of the ship and fall onto the ground. One of them rolls on its own while the other 2 burn in the flames. A few feet away from the fire, the ball comes to a stop. The top half slowly opens, releasing a thick mist. It clears to reveal the creature surrounded by his burnt-out control console. The ball rolls over and the creature crawls out. It's a tennis ball-sized, rodent-like animal covered in short quills. It moves like a hedgehog toward the crashed spaceship. It reaches the edge of the fire and stands on its hind legs and looks at the 2 balls as they burn and melt. The flames blaze in the reflection of his eyes. Cut to black. Title, Tomb of the Spaceman. Exterior forest, day. All the trees and flowers are in bloom, no path or trail, pristine nature. 3 young adults emerge from the trees carrying heavily loaded backpacks. Text, present day. Andrea, 21, is smart, bubbly, with a sun-kissed face. She has curly, dirty blonde hair cropped at the shoulders. She wears a white tank top, old torn-up jeans, and hiking shoes with worn-down tread. She carries a handheld GPS device with a map of the forest on the screen. Calvin, 25, he hasn't shaved in a couple of days and his hair is as scraggly as his beard. He wears a backward baseball cap, sunglasses, short-sleeved collared shirt, and khaki shorts. He carries a machete with its blade stained green from hacking at plants. Emily, 20, is on the lingering end of her teenage goth phase. Her hiking outfit is entirely black but very trendy. Strapped to her backpack are 2 potato cannons.
Good. I need to get off my feet for a while.
Exterior impact crater, day. The crater is now just an empty, level field covered in grass. The trees form a perfect circle around it. Andrea, Calvin, and Emily step out from the tree line. They stop and look at the field.
Wow, you weren't kidding.
I know, right? It's crazy. The smallest impact crater in the world.
So says some guy on the internet.
Some guy happens to be a geologist with 2 PhDs.
They start walking toward the center of the clearing.
If you can find one, they surveyed this place in the 50s and didn't find any.
Which is exactly why they said it's not an impact crater.
The ground is really soft. Why doesn't anything grow here?
There's grass.
Andrea looks up at the trees and grins.
Nobody knows. Weird, right? Mysterious.
She looks back at Calvin and Emily with wide, excited eyes.
I love it.
Exterior city streets, day. It's a moderate-sized city, medium-sized buildings with a few skyscrapers. Traffic is light. The sun is setting beyond the buildings, giving the sky that pink purplish glow that reflects off the windows of the buildings. A man on a motorcycle zips through, weaving in between cars. He runs a red light and a couple of cars honk. Exterior strip club, day. The sky is now a deep purple with red clouds hanging above the cityscape. The club has a long, narrow parking lot and a bright neon sign that reads, "The Boys Club." The motorcyclist rolls into the parking lot and stops the bike in one of the stalls. He removes his helmet, revealing Dr. Hunter Stone, 45. His face is aging well, despite some enhanced facial lines caused by years of working in the sun and dirt. His hair is jet black with a couple of streaks of gray on the sides. He wears jeans and a tight-fitting black t-shirt. It's obvious he works out. He stows his helmet and walks toward the entrance of the club. He approaches 3 bikers. Thomas, 55, Aaron, 50, and Victor, 52, all smoking around an ashtray by the door. They're all dressed in leather chaps and jackets with Junction City Writers Club embroidered on the back.
Evening, Professor.
I'm your professor on weekdays, you know that?
Good to see you. Finally wearing a helmet. Peer pressure finally worked, eh?
Something like that.
Now, if you just start wearing leather, you might be able to ride with us soon.
Maybe someday. See you guys in there.
Maybe someday.
Exterior impact crater, day. 3 pup tents are pitched in a semicircle near the center of the field. Andrea sits on a blanket and reads a paperback edition of the Mothman Prophecies. Calvin digs a fire pit a few feet away. Emily fiddles with one of her potato guns in the background.
So, how far are you away from graduating?
Andrea lowers her book.
About a year. I might go
You weren't around last year. Were you at a different college?
Yeah, I transferred from a state school and my grades were good enough to get accepted into Ben Lomond.
Emily sprays an aerosol can into the back end of her potato cannon and screws a lid on it.
What made you choose BLU?
Have tuition and free housing.
Really? That sounds pretty sweet. What kind of scholarship did you get for that?
I didn't get a scholarship. My bio dad is professor.
Seriously? You've never mentioned that before.
Well, it's not really something I talk about a lot. He wasn't there when I was growing up. He left my mom when she was pregnant with me.
Emily loads a potato in the cannon and pushes it into the bottom with a stick.
That's shitty.
Okay. Oh, I went a little too far. Okay, are we hooked? Let's start down here at the end of the table.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember, there's no kind ofs anymore. You're either hooked or you're not. So,
Yes.
and you can make a comment about what particularly hooked you. You don't have to. Or if you're not hooked, you can make a comment about why you're not hooked. But again, you don't have to. So, yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
How can I not be hooked with rodent aliens? I mean,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, yes, spaceships, and I'm there.
Okay.
We're a little late, but I read the first page before we started. But yeah, I'm hooked. I mean, the only thing would be the rodent aliens. That might be a little foreign to me, but that's okay. But we're 4 pages in, so it's okay.
Cool. Yeah, I'm hooked too. Okay, great. Continue.
I know. And after I was born, he was always around the world on his archaeological digs.
Wait, your father isn't Professor Stone, is it? I love this class.
That's him, my dad, PhD. He would send me birthday and Christmas presents sometimes. But outside of that, nothing. Crickets.
How did you reconnect?
Emily inspects the rest of her cannon, tightening all the connections, making sure it's safe to fire.
It was weird. As soon as I moved out of my mom's house, he started emailing me, telling me that children of facility get a great deal on tuition at BLU. And I could live with him if I wanted.
Emily shoulders her cannon and points it at the sky.
So he's trying to make up for years of neglect, sounds like.
Yep, it's too little too late, but I'll take it. I mean, why not? He owes me, right?
Call that the deadbeat dad scholarship.
They both laugh. A loud bang goes off in the background, startling Calvin and Andrea. They look over and see Emily holding her potato cannon with steam coming out of the barrel.
Yeah.
She looks over with a big toothy smile and points over the tree line. Exterior forest day. The creature is perched on a tree branch. The potato from Emily's gun comes screaming down and bashing into the ground below. The creature scurries down the tree and inspects the potato steaming on the ground. It nudges the potato with its nose, then turns and looks toward the direction it came from. Interior strip club night. The club is dimly lit and busy. Stages with strippers in various states of undress are scattered around throughout the bar. Scantily clad waitresses roam around serving customers, men and women, drinks. Hunter sits at a booth in one of the corners alone. Jessica, 24, a stripper in a baby blue bikini, walks up to the table.
Mind if I join you?
Please, I'll buy you a drink.
She slides in next to him.
I'm Sparkle.
Hunter.
A look of recognition crosses her face.
Oh my God, Professor Stone, you don't recognize me. I was in one of your history classes.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's dark in here.
It's okay. It just caught me by surprise. I just don't usually see my teachers in here.
He smiles.
Will you still let me buy you a drink?
Exterior impact crater night. Andrea, Calvin, and Emily sit around a campfire on the ground. They pass around a joint.
And the moonlight, which is always sad, as the light of the sun itself is, as the light called human life is, as it's coming and it's going.
Macbeth.
He hands Andrea the joint.
Does that sound like iambic pentameter to you?
She takes a hit and holds her breath.
I'm not sure what that means. All I know about Shakespeare from 10th grade.
It's not Shakespeare, it's Dickens' Tale of Two Cities.
Andrea passes the joint to Emily and she tokes off it.
How do you even know that? You're a chemistry major.
Emily offers the joint to Calvin. He holds up his hand.
I need to take a lead.
He stands up and walks toward the tree line.
Okay, my turn.
Exterior forest night. Half-baked, Calvin stumbles into the trees, stops, unzips his pants, and starts peeing on the ground. He hears a rustling in the trees. He looks up, sees calm trees. He shrugs it off and returns his attention to the puddle he's making in the dirt. He looks at his feet and sees the creature on his shoe.
Holy shit!
He stumbles backward and falls on his ass. He zips up his pants as fast as he can as he crawls backwards. The creature stands on its hind legs and stares at him. He gets to his feet, regains his composure, and leans down to get a closer look. His eyes meet the gaze of the creature. He freezes. He and the creature stand there for a moment, locked in a hypnotic trance. His eyes roll into the back of his head, and he collapses in the puddle of his urine. Interior Hunter's living room, night. The room is decorated in a postmodern decor. It's spacious and comfortable. There's a full shelf with antiques, books, and artifacts from all over the world are scattered throughout the room. Hunter and Jessica sit across from each other at one of the coffee tables. She's now wearing a tank top and yoga pants. There are two long, thick lines of cocaine laid out for them. She bends over the table, puts a rolled-up dollar bill in her nose, and starts to snort one of the lines of cocaine. She only makes it about halfway through.
Oh my God.
She drops the dollar and slides back into her chair, rubbing the palms of her hands on the upholstery. He picks up the dollar and snorts his line in a single pass.
Wow, that's like some hardcore shit. How can you handle that much at once?
He seems unfazed by the drugs. He wipes his nose and takes a deep breath.
Practice.
He offers the dollar back to her. She waves it off. He finishes off what's left of her line.
I never thought I'd be doing this with you.
He pulls his head up from the table and tilts it back and sniffs hard.
Well, life is full of surprises.
She gets up from her seat and crawls on top of him. He leans back, puts his hands on her back as she runs her fingers through his hair.
Oh, yeah.
They start making out. Exterior impact crater night. Andrea and Emily continue laughing, smoking, and looking up at the stars. Andrea calls into the distance.
Hey, Cal, did you fall in?
They both giggle. Calvin walks out of the woods and comes toward them. He looks glossy-eyed and out of it. He's bleeding from a gash on his forehead.
You okay? What happened to your head?
What you got there?
He gets closer. They see that he's holding the creature in his hand. They both shriek.
Oh my God, what the hell is that?
Did you bring a wild animal to our campsite?
The girls back away from Calvin, who looks at them blankly.
Just get it out of here. Put it back where you found it.
This isn't funny.
Home. I want to go home.
We can't leave right now. Let's just clean you up, and we'll go home when the sun comes up.
Calvin advances menacingly toward the girls.
I could well move if I were as you. If I could pray to move, prayers would move me.
The girls back up as he walks toward them. The campfire's reflection blazes in his eyes.
What?
His voice raises and booms off the mountains in the distance.
I am constant as the northern star, of whose true fixed and resting quality there is no fellow in the firmament. The skies are painted with unnumbered sparks.
Look, if you're trying to freak us out, you succeeded. Ha ha, scare the girls, real mature.
We are all fire, and every one doth shine, but there is but on in all doth hold his place, so in the world. 'Tis furnished well with men, and men are flesh and blood and apprehensive. Yet in the number I do not know, but one that unassailable holds on his rank, unshaken of motion.
Shakespeare, you're quoting Julius Caesar. There, I guessed right. Now you can stop being a dick.
He sits down by the fire. The creature crawls up on his shoulder.
Home, I want to go home.
What is that thing?
I have no clue.
Andrea makes eye contact. She experiences a similar hypnotic effect as Calvin.
Hey, Andrea, hey!
Emily shakes her by the shoulders until she snaps out of it.
We need to get out of here.
We can't leave. It's a 3-hour hike back down to the car.
Calvin rises and arches back until his head is between his shoulder blades. He opens his mouth. The creature scurries up to his face and forces itself down Calvin's throat. He gags and convulses as the creature bulges the skin of his neck. The girls scream.
What the shit?
Fucking gross!
Calvin regains his composure. He looks at the girls.
I'm going home.
He picks up the shovel from beside the fire pit, walks to the exact center of the clearing, and starts digging. The girls are wide-eyed and confused. Interior Hunter's bedroom, day. Hunter and Jessica sleep in a king-size bed. Sunlight shines through the bay window onto Hunter's face. His eyes flutter open. He sits up and rubs his face and looks over at her. He hears a loud banging on his front door. She moans. He rubs his temples. The banging continues.
Someone's at the door.
Yeah, stay here.
Interior Hunter's house, day. Hunter, wearing nothing but tight-fitting boxer shorts, opens the door to reveal Dr. Coombs, 55, a brilliant medical scientist with a stern look on his face. He's dressed in a suit and tie.
Hey, Doc, what's going on?
Did you forget something?
Huh?
Coombs looks at Hunter's eyes.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Hunter, your eyes are dilated.
Hunter rubs his hand down his face.
Do you even know what day it is?
Saturday.
It's Monday. Have you been doing cocaine again?
Why do I have to answer all these questions?
Coombs pushes his way into the house.
Because you're supposed to be at the conference 2 hours ago. We've been trying to call you. They wanted to check to see if you were in the hospital.
Good thing you checked here first.
You're lucky that Gardner was there and ready. They rescheduled your lecture for tonight.
Fuck me.
Jessica down the hallway in her yoga pants and bra. Coombs recognizes her.
Jessica?
Dr. Coombs? Oh my God.
She turns back to the bedroom and closes the door behind her. Coombs stares at Hunter, shaking his head.
A student?
Former.
You can't keep doing this. You're going to get fired or kill yourself.
Exterior impact crater day. Calvin continues digging a hole that's about 5 feet deep. Andrea and Emily watch from the campsite. The tents and gear are packed. The fire is out with a few embers still smoldering. He spots a green, glowing gemstone about the size of a baseball. He brushes the dirt away, picks it up, and climbs out of the hole.
You ready to go home now? We need to get you to a hospital.
What is that?
He holds the gemstone toward the girls.
Space rock.
He looks at it with a huge grin on his face. He walks toward the tree line.
Hey, come back. You need to take your gear.
He disappears into the forest.
Just leave it.
Interior Hunter's bathroom day. Hunter, now wearing jeans, splashes water on his face. Jessica, fully dressed, leans against the doorframe.
So is this just like a one-time thing, or
What?
She points to a bra hanging from the towel rack.
am I just another stripper you brought home?
That's my daughter's.
Wow, you fuck strippers and do cocaine with a teenage girl living in your house?
Says a stripper who did cocaine with a former professor, and she's not a teenager. When did you get so self-righteous?
I gotta go. You got my number if you decide I'm not just another druggy slut.
She leaves. Hunter listens to her high heels clack down the hallway and the front door open and close.
God
Like that.
damn it.
Exterior trailhead day. It's a small parking lot with a single 90s model sedan parked in one of the stalls. Calvin's bent over with his hands on the trunk, vomiting blood. Andrea and Emily come down the trail, weighed down by their backpacks. Sweaty and out of breath, they see Calvin. Emily takes her backpack off and rushes to help him. She sits him down on the ground and examines his head wound.
Do you have a signal yet?
Andrea checks her phone.
No, get him in the car.
Exterior mountain. Countryside day. It's a far-flung mountain road. A lone car drives down the winding path. Interior Andrea's car day. Andrea drives down the mountain road with Emily in the passenger seat. Calvin lays in the back seat, passed out, his hand still clutching the gemstone. Exterior Ben Lomond University night. We see a wide shot of the campus. It's nearly empty with just a few students meandering about.
For all we know, man is the most advanced, most intelligent, most supreme life form in the universe.
Interior lecture hall, a half-filled auditorium lecture classroom. It's an older room with dark, finely finished hardwood walls. College students and professors of various ethnicities are in disparate states of paying attention. Some are taking notes on their laptops, while others fiddle on their phones or simply watching. Combs sits in the back row.
There's certainly no evidence to the contrary. The human race has evolved over thousands of years to become the most advanced of any known animal. Human culture, technology, and scientific understanding dwarfs any other species. In fact, the characteristics I mentioned are all but absent anywhere in the animal kingdom. Why do you suppose that is?
Students fiddle around with their pencils and blank looks on their faces.
Anyone. Nobody even wants to guess.
Neocortex.
That's part of it, but other animals have developed a neocortex. Perhaps not as advanced as ours, but nonetheless they have highly advanced motor functions, sometimes even more developed than our own. What else separates man from beast?
Prefrontal cortex.
Any other ideas that don't rhyme with ortex?
Coombs' pager beeps. He pulls it out and checks it.
Intelligence.
Good start, but there are many other intelligent species. What else?
Coombs gets up and walks out of the classroom. Hunter notices.
Language. Free will.
All good answers, but I'm still looking for something more.
Soul.
Hunter looks up and sees Andrea standing in the back of the lecture hall and smiles. Exterior hospital night. It's a new, sleek facility. The sign out front says Ben Lomond University Teaching Hospital. Interior examination room night. Calvin sits on an exam table, still holding the gemstone. Dr. Coombs performs a medical exam while Emily stands against the wall.
And this animal you ate, what did it look like?
Calvin doesn't say anything. He's catatonic.
Like a little porcupine hobgoblin, and he didn't eat it. It just sort of crawled inside him.
Coombs looks at the gemstone.
Calvin, I'm going to need to look at your rock. Can I see it?
Coombs tries to take the gemstone from Calvin. He pulls his arms back reflexively. Coombs looks closer at Calvin's hands. His palms are bright red and developing blisters around the edge of the gemstone. He walks to the telephone, picks it up, and dials.
Get me radiology.
Interior Hunter's house, night. Hunter and Andrea come through the front door. Andrea's carrying her backpack.
Sounds like he had a bad trip.
No, there's way more than that.
Nah, he's nuts. Alright, so he's nuts. Don't hang out with me.
She scoffs, rolls her eyes, and walks down the hallway to her room.
I don't know what to tell you. Strange encounters aren't my field.
He makes his way over to the bar and starts mixing 2 drinks. She comes back without her backpack and sits on the chair Hunter used the night before. He walks over and hands her a drink.
Just relax. I'm sure Doc will take good care of him. How long has it been since you slept or showered?
He sits down opposite her. She takes a sip of her drink and sets the glass on the table. She notices cocaine residue on the surface. She runs her finger through it and holds it up to him.
This is what you do when I'm not here.
Well,
She looks down at her chair and pulls out a pair of thong panties.
These are cute.
She flings them at him like a rubber band. They hit him in the face. She giggles. He blushes and grins.
thank you for not lecturing me.
She takes another sip of her drink.
You should come visit Calvin with me in the morning.
Why would I want to do that?
She shrugs.
He really likes your class, and maybe it would lift his spirits to get a friendly visitor.
Okay, now tell me the real reason.
She lets out an exasperated sigh.
Something really strange just happened to me, okay? That thing, or whatever it was, put me in this hypnotic trance for like a second, and I got like all these weird visions.
What kind of visions?
I don't know, they were like dreams that you can't remember when you wake up.
You were all high. When you get some sleep, you'll feel much better.
Just come with me tomorrow. I just want you to believe me.
He nods.
Okay, of course I'll go.
Interior examination room, night. A man dressed in hazmat gear is in a violent struggle with Calvin, still clutching the gemstone in his fist, which is now bloody and steaming. His eyes are bloodshot and he's bleeding out of his ears. Coombs and Emily are backed up against the wall.
Calvin, stop.
Hazmat man starts to pin Calvin down. Calvin slashes and bites at him. The man gets Calvin to the ground and holds him there. Coombs opens one of the cupboards and starts to pull open drawers. He retrieves a syringe and a small bottle of liquid medicine. He shoves the needle through the bottle lid and into the medicine and starts filling the syringe.
We just want that rock, son.
Calvin hisses loudly through his teeth, producing a sharp, ear-piercing tone, stunning everyone in the room. Emily covers her ears and mashes against the wall, hitting the light switch. The room goes dark as she slides to the ground. The gemstone glows a bright green. Coombs tries to turn toward Calvin and Hazmat Man, but loses his balance, falls, and bangs his head on the corner of the counter before he hits the ground. The syringe falls out of his hand and rolls towards Emily's feet. In a burst of energy, Calvin breaks Hazmat Man's hold on him, pushing him away. He springs from the floor and tackles Hazmat. Calvin sits on Hazmat Man's chest. He pushes the gemstone onto the plastic face guard of his helmet. The gemstone's green glow gets brighter and the plastic starts to melt. Emily grabs the syringe. The gemstone starts melting the plastic. Hazmat Man struggles to get away, but the pressure on his helmet has him pinned. Emily lunges from the floor, stabbing Calvin in the thigh with the syringe and pushing the plunger. His eyes roll into the back of his head and he falls backward with a loud crack as his head hits the floor. Coombs, Hazmat Man, and Emily stand up and gather around Calvin. He's out, blood oozes out his new wound and pools on the ground. He still has a death grip on the gemstone. Interior Andrea's bedroom. The lights are off. The moonlight through the window illuminates Andrea lying on the bed in pajamas. The walls are decorated with posters from classic sci-fi films, including Forbidden Planet, Invasion of the Saucer Men, The Blob, and The Day Mars Invaded Earth. She's not sleeping well. She shifts her position every few seconds. She settles down and starts breathing rapidly. Flash white. Exterior alien planet, day. Andrea stands alone on a red rocky landscape. It's arid, covered in thousands of holes that look like they might be interconnected.
Hello?
She bends down to inspect one of the holes. One of the aliens, which look like variants of the creature, pops out and glares at her. She steps back in fright. Out of all the holes, thousands more aliens start crawling out of their holes. They slowly start to crawl towards her. She turns around to see the oncoming threat. One leaps at her, landing on her face, trying to force itself in her mouth. She throws it off as a dozen more aliens spring onto her body. More follow until she's completely engulfed by the creatures. Exterior alien city, day. It's a sprawling metropolis with fantastic skyscrapers, futuristic transportation, and a lot of people. The sky is a greenish mess. Andrea stands in a bustle full of blue-skinned humanoids going about their business in what appears to be a downtown district. She looks around at the roads and sees a sewage drain. One of the aliens pops out and scurries onto the street. It's followed by another, then another. She looks up and sees hundreds of them pouring onto the streets, and underfoot are the crowd of blueskins. The blue-skinned aliens start to panic, some trying to stomp the creatures, others trying to run away, and some just scream. The aliens attack the blueskins, leaping onto them and forcing themselves down their throats. It's pandemonium. She watches as all the blueskins are overcome and fall to the ground one by one. A large shadow in the shape of a circle falls on the area. She looks up and sees an enormous flying saucer spaceship floating over the skyscrapers. The blueskins start to get up and brush themselves off. They all have a foggy-eyed look about them now. The flying saucer shines a piercing bright light on another part of the city, which starts to grow blindingly white. The blueskins all turn and walk toward the source of the light. She tries to avoid the oncoming swarm of blueskins, some frantically trying to get to the light. The crowd becomes thicker and moves faster as more and more blueskins fill the streets. One of them knocks her to the ground. She tries to get up, but her hand gets stepped on by one of the zombified blueskins. Then another one steps on her shoulder. They start moving faster and faster. She struggles against the crowd, trying desperately to get up. But it's to no avail. She gets drawn underfoot and trampled by all the blueskins advancing toward the light. She looks up in horror to see a large, heavy boot coming down quickly toward her head. Interior Andrea's room, day. Andrea wakes up with a fright. She sits straight up in bed, looks around, and spots a notepad on her desk. She jumps out of bed. She grabs the notepad and a pen and starts writing. Okay. Well, that's all we're going to read tonight. So it's the beginning. It's a full-length script, but this is the first 24. But that's an excellent response. Isn't that great? Is that it? That's kind of the way I feel too. It's like I want to keep reading. So excellent work, Danny. I want to point out a few things before we get in. You know, the excellent formatting. Obviously, there are typos, but this is a first draft, so.
All those missing words were intentional to make sure you're paying attention.
Right. Okay. No more talking for Daniel. Okay. But yeah, formatting-wise, you know, it looks really great. Just some typos, and then the only irregularity I noticed in the formatting is sometimes in the direction underneath the dialogue or above the dialogue block, you know, in between the character slug and the dialogue block, you have those capitalized, which seemed irregular to me. Like on page 8, you got Calvin in a Scottish accent is all capitalized, and that's unnecessary. And you've got that. What's that?
There was a more.
That's okay because it's Calvin himself who's speaking. It's at the bottom of page 11. Yeah, there's a more. And if a dialogue block is interrupted, then the more is appropriate.
I want to understand that.
Bottom of page 11. Is that the more?
If it's interrupted by a page break?
Right, because if you look on the top of the next page, it goes to Calvin.
That's how we should be doing it?
Yeah. The only time that you need to use more is if the same character's dialogue continues on the next page.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your software should actually.
Blah, blah, blah. So, same thing on page 16, about 2/3 of the way down. Underneath Emily, it says to Andrea. There's no need for caps there. But I hope you guys can see how smoothly it reads. You know, when something is properly formatted, how smoothly it reads, and you know, there's not confusion, there's no hang-ups. You're not trying to figure out what the hell's going on. It's just there. You know, it's clean.
He's taken the class like 4 times.
I know. Well, that's what I'm pointing out, and I'm not going to stop with that because, you know, I also noticed he. In his dream sequence or his vision sequence, you know, he didn't write dream sequence, he just did it, and we all understood exactly what it was, right? So this is so gratifying to me. I mean, to me, I was thinking about this the other day, like when I read Michael's stuff or you know, people who have taken the class or other screenwriters who are serious about formatting, but especially when it's my former students, I feel proud, you know, it's like, wow, it's like they're writing like, you know, it's professionals. And this, you know, when it's, and by the way, I don't think Danny would mind me saying, but his first script that he wrote for the first class wasn't that great. You know, it was kind of it wasn't like this, you know, it didn't have that hook at the beginning, it didn't carry you through. When you got to page 25, you weren't saying, what's next? You know, let's keep reading. So, you know, Danny's written, how many scripts have you written since that first one?
Features?
Yeah. 5, yeah. So what a great leap forward. And what I really like, though, is Danny has a very particular sensibility. This kind of funky, fun, and that's stayed, you know, that's still there. But now it's presented in a professional way. And I think, you know, this is, if this just came across my desk and I was reading it, I would definitely want to keep reading, because it's like, wow, this is interesting. It's fresh. It's a genre piece, but it's kind of fresh and it's interesting, and I don't know what's going to happen, and it's good. And characters are there. The descriptions of the characters are very good, and I don't have trouble seeing. I mean, the images that Danny wants me to see, I'm seeing them. You know, I see the movie. I believe very close to what he's seeing in his mind, and yet, you know, he's not. I mean, there's some big chunks of description without dialogue, but he gives them air, and they don't seem to bog it down. And I think a lot of that has to do because he's not putting so much weight on all of his sentences. You know, he's just saying, this is what happens, this is what happens, this is what happens. He's having some fun with it, and he's playing with the language, but he's not getting carried away, as we've seen, you know, because a lot of us come from fiction writing, or we're used to reading books, and so when we write these scene descriptions, as you've seen, as we've read, there's a real tendency for us to overwrite and to, you know, too many adverbs, too many adjectives, you know, too much description, too much extraneous details too many extraneous details that don't need to be there. But we're seeing something, you know, here we're just seeing what's necessary to get the story going. And I know what happens next, and I was kind of bummed because it's like, damn, I should have said 30 pages.
I almost brought 30 pages just in case.
That was my commentary, was his timing is perfect. I mean, it really is, because you get 4 or 5 minutes into it and you're hooked, and then now here we are mid-20s, and you know, roughly 20 minutes into it, and he just barely introduces the blue guys, which we have no idea who or what they are, but I want to keep reading. I mean, the timing is really good. Really,
and you're still hooked, right? Page 24, is there anybody who's not hooked at this, still hooked? Okay, good. Well, I hope I haven't biased anyone. I'm not saying that this is a perfect screenplay by any means, so let's talk about it. And so you guys tell us what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Yes, Joan.
I love it because even though you get a sense that it's slightly campy, you're taking it seriously. Like, I really am interested in these characters because I'm drawn in. I want to know. I want to see what happens. Even like the aliens that maybe seem like bad guys, but there's some mysteriousness there, and they're cute little critters.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm hooked. I want more.
Right. Did anything strike you as odd, or anything you didn't like, or?
The only thing that jumped out to me was maybe swapping the names of Calvin and Hunter. Hunter seems a more now present day young mid-20s kind of name, and Calvin seems like an older man's name.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Mine was the only criticism would be maybe a little more detail on the rodents, because the entire time I kept thinking of the chipmunks, the 3 chipmunks, Alvin, Simon, and Theodore. That's the only thing I kept thinking of, and maybe that's just because, I mean, do we need detail? Do we not need detail? And that's the only thing. Are they Earth-like rodents, or are we looking at some other type of description that maybe would clearly be a different, you know, physical appearance or something like that?
Now but you did read the first page.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right, Jared. Yeah.
Okay, so I was really impressed with how well it flowed, and I liked that the characters, especially Hunter, it seemed, we weren't told who he was, or shown who he was by what he was doing. You know, he's obviously kind of a playboy, sort of fancies himself as a bad boy, picking up strippers at strip clubs, doing coke. I mean, you get a pretty plus he's this professor that's incredibly talented and smart, giving lectures and things like that, and it definitely paints an interesting character. So I really liked how the characters were developed like that, and it seemed like Andrea was kind of along the same way. And you also get, through the conversation, you get a picture of their relationship, which I thought was, I really liked that, because, and let's see, and I liked that the descriptions were very short, very succinct, got the job done, got you in and out, got you what you need to know and nothing else, really, is what it seemed like. And dialogue felt really natural for the most part. Yeah, I really liked it.
Okay.
I have a question. Is the alien and the creature the same thing, or is the creature something different? I feel like they sound like the same thing, but is the creature something different? I don't know.
Okay.
Anybody gonna tell me?
No, I mean, if you didn't pick it up from the script, that's a good question.
I must have spaced off.
It switches from rodent alien
So it's
to
It
creature.
says when the one space creature attacked the person, let's say it's a space creature or alien, so it gets like, is it one of the three or is it something totally separate?
Right.
I think that's kind of the question.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was my question.
Is it one?
Alright.
Is it one of the three, or is it completely some
Okay.
different entity altogether? That's a good. Yeah.
All right.
But it is one of those three, right? Am I right? I don't know.
At the bottom of
I'll
page
have to
one,
reread it
I'll
and pick
assume
it up.
so. Yes,
Says,
but I don't
I'm
know.
just saying it wasn't clear to me.
I'm gonna go with yes.
Well, to me, it seemed like
It would seem that way, but I would rather it be called the alien than creature.
I'm almost certain that it's yes.
to me it
So
seemed
why are
like,
they
actually
why are
certain.
they different characters? Because
true.
you've got aliens in caps, and then you've got the creature in caps.
Because it went
Okay.
from dome to ball.
It was Alvin.
okay. But I really liked the. I mean, I really liked the moment of when he sees his other two buddies burn up. That was like, oh, that made me go, oh, poor little thing. Yeah, it crawls down people's throats. Okay. Yeah. Jaina, what do you think?
I got ET vibes a little bit. If ET was evil, maybe.
Did you?
Maybe.
No, it's a little more funny than E.T. Don't you
I
think?
mean, at first, there's a
It's-
spaceship
it's-
in the woods. 3 kids come along.
Oh,
Huh. Interesting. Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm right on this, but I think I'm right. When she's in her bedroom and on the wall, there's posters of 4
Right.
relatively well-known classic sci-fis. To me that was a way to let me as a reader know, hey, this is going to be kind of a funky old school callback space adventure.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm right on that, but I think I'm probably right.
There's something else I noticed, and I asked Danny a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't realize it, but one of my favorite campy horror movies called Reanimator. Just love it. If you ever, go find Reanimator and watch it. It's the craziest, wildest movie. But the actor who plays the mad scientist his name is Jeffrey Combs. And so when I saw, and I was getting some of the same vibe, and so when I read, this professor named Combs, I was like, oh, he's making a Reanimator reference. That's so awesome. And it turns out he wasn't. It was just but it fits. It's like, great. And you should get Jeffrey Combs to play him because he'd be fantastic. And we Reanimator fans would love it. All right. Randy, what do you think?
I just have a sense of confidence in the script, and the relationships and the subplots that are being introduced don't seem frivolous or wasted, because I expect that we're going to get the payoff before the story's over. So the introductions are interesting. Of course, I enjoy the literary references and the confusion. Was it Shakespeare? Was it Dickens? To put that level of sophistication into a campy space film, love that touch. And so the thing I was most impressed with is the poetry, the nonsense poetry that comes out of Calvin after he gets influenced, that I really admire.
Nice, nice. Yeah, Michael?
Well, it's fun, it's quirky, it's something I would expect Danny to write. It's a movie I'd be watching and just be laughing at because these things are so ridiculous and they're just fun to see. I'm enjoying it, I'm hooked in it. I am wondering still exactly what the story is going to be. I mean, I could make some educated guesses on where it's going to go, but I still don't know yet. We're at page 26. I also wonder why we lingered so long on the professor and the hookers scene, which doesn't have anything to do with the story yet. I have no idea if it will become important to the story at some point, but at this point I'm wondering.
Appeal.
I really do like the nonsense dialogue of Calvin once the alien takes over. I really felt like an alien mind was in there trying to pick Calvin's brain and get the language and try to speak it. It really felt authentic.
Great. Anne?
I'm enjoying it, and when you have the unusual things, you always want to see what else is coming up. You know, how this is going to connect with that. So you've got me. I'm following along. Got it.
Nice. All right. Joan, you had another comment?
I do, because and maybe just the reading of it is telling me something a little different, but I'm actually kind of feeling like there's still a really serious element going on here. It's not just, campy Mars attacks or evolution or something like that. Like, I feel like there's going to be some seriousness integrated in with this weird alien attack. So I'm digging it for that reason also. Just I'm getting kind of a duplicitous thing going on, and I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of, you can tell it's campy, but you can also tell it's smart, right? It's
Yeah.
smart campy. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not dumb campy. It's
No.
smart campy.
I'm good. I've said enough.
All right.
I really like it. It's good.
Yeah. The one part that I felt that you might still want to address is the exposition when Andrea and Calvin are sitting down and she's talking about her dad at the campsite. It just feels a little exposition-y, just a little bit. So I feel like you can make another pass and trim that down a bit and have her be a little less open and verbose, say the same stuff, transfer the same information without being quite so, this is what happened, this is what happened. That, and then for the rest of you, I want to let you know that this, so Danny gave me his first pass, when we started and everybody was supposed to be writing their daily pages. And so when he turned it in, so this is the third time that I've now read, this first part of the script. And so he turned it in, jotted down some notes, we talked about it, he did another one, and then now he's, redone it here. So take that into consideration when you're, it's like we were talking about Eli was talking on Facebook about, wasn't it Eli? No, was it Eli who was saying, do you hate your script? And, go back and forth. And but it's that expectation that the rough draft is supposed to be brilliant and wonderful. It's not, it doesn't have to be, it's not going to be. And if it is, it's like, wow, how did that happen, But, you have to get it out there in order to see, what's not quite working, and then you'd make another pass, and then by your third pass through, you're getting something that's like, wow, this is really starting to work. So keep that in mind and don't get discouraged, especially if you write, if you write 70 pages, 80 pages, 100 pages, before you go back and start again, and realize what the things you want to change. But it's a little unfair for us to read first drafts in our class, and I apologize for that, but it's also, I feel like it's the best way for you to learn, because even though that first reading, you guys walk away feeling a little beat up, but some of the mistakes that you made, you're not ever going to make again, and And I want you to know that we all recognize that, and so it's not, you know, we all understand what first drafts are, what rough drafts are, and I fully expect that, you know, every single one of you, we don't have a bad writer among us, which is really nice, you know, and rare. So it's going to be fun for me, and for as many of you that stay, you know, in touch afterwards to watch as these stories develop. And we'll keep the Facebook page open so that we can continue to have conversations, and it's nice to have Michael and Danny and Pam who've taken the class before and can, you know, if I'm not available, can answer questions and talk, and generally I'll probably agree with them. If I don't, I'll come in and say, no, what the hell are you talking about? But this is exciting, and I just, you know, I want to applaud Danny for good work, and I really look forward to reading the rest. So let's give him a good hand. All right, kissed your ass enough. Now you're not getting. No, go be humble, and, you know, give me the rest of it so I can tell you how it sucks, and then you can, you know, get back to it. This is going to be a fun movie. Really looking forward to it.
Have you finished the whole thing, or are you still?
It's a work in progress.
Okay, wonderful. Now let's talk about. And Jared, do you have the group up? So if anybody has a question.
Some comments from the group.
Great, let's hear it.
Eli said the creature sparked my interest. Corey said Hooked sounds like a little Critter sequel. Corey says feels like screenplay out of the 80s, super cool. Pam says still hooked. And Reanimator rules.
Yeah. There's also a sequel to Reanimator. Can't remember what it is, but it's also funky. But okay, excellent. Now, as we continue to talk, be sure to keep an eye on that. So if anybody has a question, I want to. It's our last opportunity, and you guys are well into your writing. So this is our last opportunity to talk in a forum about any challenges you're having, and any way that we can help. Any questions, any challenges, now's the time to bring them up. Yes, Joan.
I mentioned my screenwriter ADHD, and I'm having it big time. I've got so many ideas that I can't pull them together and make them work.
So many ideas for different scripts, or
Yeah,
so many
and
ideas
I've got 'em
within
all,
the.
I've got so many ideas for different things that I can't focus in on the one I'm supposed to be working on.
All right.
How do I eject the others and just stay focused?
Well, that's a good question, and here's my advice to you. Life is short, and professional opportunities are few and far between. So, you either have to do one of two things, and both are equally valid, but my heart would say, if you knew you only had 1 year to live, what's the script that you would write? That's how I used to approach all my films that way. But I think that's really important, you know, because some of us may not even have a year to live, you know. I might not live through the night. Not that I have any particularly crazy plans, but that's a great way to approach it, because, you know, any script might be your last script for whatever reason, you know, and if there's only one script that you can leave behind or that you would want made, that's the one you should do. And so go through all of your scripts and say, and ask, you know, it's like, really, if I have 1 year to live, which one do I do? And do that. That's what I would say. Now, I made a film called Evil Angel, which was a horror movie. It was just a straight up horror movie, lots of nudity, lots of violence, lots of gore. Had a hell of a great time. And I had somebody challenge me on that one time, because they say, you always say, you know, write and make the movie that if it's your last one, if you've only got a year left, it's the one that you'll make. And I thought about it, and I said, no, I still was keeping my my rule, my vow, you know, my approach, because at that time I had made several films that were personal, that were spiritual, that were, you know, things that were for me, and I was dead broke, and I was just like, I've got to make some money. My kids are going to need money. If I have a year left to live, I don't want to just leave them with, here's, you know, Dad's got some movies that, you know, people think are good. You know, I want them to be able to go to college and stuff. So I actually approached it. I consciously approached that film saying, I'm just going to make a shitload of money, and didn't work out that way. Sometimes it doesn't, but that was the plan, and that was the approach. So I recommend you do that. Okay. Anything else?
That was me, Rick.
Yeah, probably.
It was, I remember that answer too.
Yeah.
There's a comment in the chat. Corey says, I'm having a tough time shaving down my descriptions to make my screenplay shorter and keep the relevant info.
Okay. All right. The two things we've learned in doing this class several times is, one, I think I told you one time we had a student who just wrote, I mean, it was like big, thick sections of scene description, and it was just, the entire class, we're all about to hang ourselves, because it was just like, it's going to take us till 2087 to get through this fucking thing, you know? And so eventually, after about 45 minutes, I just said, stop. And somebody else was reading the scene description, and I said, just read the first sentence of every paragraph and jump to the next first sentence of the next. We talked about this once in class, and so that's what we did. And it was remarkable. It was amazing that the story just suddenly started to crank along. And yeah, there were little chunks missing, but we were able to fill in the blanks, and it was just like, just by reading the first sentence, you know, so like 1/8 of what this guy was writing, and we followed the story, and it suddenly, we were zipping along, and suddenly we were paying attention, and we didn't miss anything valuable. So look at your script that way, you know, go through and just do that, you know, as an experiment, and see what you've got, and then you know, you can see, well, but I really need this. So it's like, okay, add that back in. But you could easily cut your scene descriptions down by half simply by doing that. That's one way to do it. One way, and I strongly recommend this, is to go in and take out every single adjective and every single adverb. You know, he walks slowly down the grassy path. Get rid of slowly, get rid of grassy. You know, he walks down the path. Bam. I mean, get rid of every single one of them. And then go back to your scene and say, you know, if you've got a scene that's a page long, get rid of every single adjective and adverb. And then go in and say, all right, Richard says I can have 3. Go pick your 3 favorites and put them back in. That's going to help enormously, right? And then, I mean, you see what a difference that makes, though? You know, he walks down the path. You know, he doesn't walk slowly down the grassy path, staring into the sky, you know, scratching his chin, or, you know, into a room. Get rid of every piece of, give a room, like they walk into a cabin, describe the cabin, and give yourself that one sentence like we did of saying, this is what the cabin looks like. Give a good general thing. It's like it's a rustic, you know, a dirty rustic cabin with holes in the wall that you can see right out into the field. Great, that's it. You don't need to talk anything more about what's on the tables and what's on the, you know, the ceiling and the, you know, cobwebs. Just forget all that stuff. Just allow yourself in a scene that 1 to 2 sentences maximum of description of the scene. And then allow yourself, when a new character enters the screenplay, and allow yourself that 1 to 2 sentences this is the thing. This is where you have to be disciplined, because a lazy writer is just going to spend 6 sentences saying, and this is how, you know, describing a person. And a lazy writer is going to spend 12 sentences describing the inside of a room. But a smart writer is going to take 2 sentences each and just boil it all down and find the way, even if it takes a half an hour to sit there and play around with the words and the descriptions, to decide, you know, if you've got 2 sentences maximum to nail that character, like we did in class, like we talked about in class, 2 sentences maximum to nail the location. Think of how fast your scenes are going to go. You've got a very quick description of where you are, and when you go back to that location, you don't need to say another fucking thing unless there's something that plays into you know, if there's a prop, if there's a gun, if there's a gun on the wall that someone's going to pull off and shoot somebody with, obviously you'll talk about the gun on the wall, but you won't talk about all the other shit on the walls, right? It's just what's going to play. So you can see, you get into a scene, you got that quick description of who's in it, and then no adjectives and adverbs. You're just, this is what happens. You're talking to the blind guy sitting next to you in the movie theater. You know, John walks through the door and, you know, whatever. Margaret's showering and John watches her shower, and the blind guy's going to be really excited. But remember that, and then you'll be able to see how fast it'll just clip along. And you can't hide anything when you're writing that way. It's like if you don't have a story, it's going to be apparent, you know. And if your characters don't have relationships, if your dialogue blows, it's all going to be apparent, because one thing about these scene descriptions is the more flowery and the more writerly we get, the more we can fool ourselves and people who are reading it into thinking that there's something there, that there's something of substance. And yes, there might be some pretty words and some pretty languages, but what matters, you know, what's going to transfer to the screen are going to be the characters, the relationships, the story, the dialogue. And so don't allow yourself to be fooled. It doesn't matter if you write beautiful description. Nobody in the movie theater is going to see those descriptions. Nobody's going to even know that's there. A lot of people don't even realize that there's a writer writing this stuff. But they are going to hear the words, and they are going to see the images, and that's what you got to stick with. So that's what I would say, Corey. Is those are good ways to do it. And same thing with dialogue. You know, go through your dialogue, and every time. I love screenwriting. I write fiction as well, and it's really interesting to me. The thing I really like about screenwriting is how contained it is. It's like you've got 100 pages, more or less. And so, you know, when you're writing a novel, it's like, you know, you've got 500 pages of word after word after word, and you can work on it forever, you know. What I really like about it, you still approach a screenplay with the same care. You should. I think most screenwriters don't. They're incredibly lazy and sloppy and just splash it out there. But, you know, taking the time to look, just to say, okay, now I'm going to make a dialogue pass. I'm just going to go through and just, you know, I've already looked at all my scene headings. I've already looked at the scene descriptions. I've made an adverb and an adjective pass. I've made a gerund pass to make sure there's not everybody's inging all the time. He's walking, she's sitting, blah, blah, blah. You make those kind of passes, but then make a pass through your dialogue and just say, can I condense this dialogue in any way? Is there anything unnecessary here? And I don't mean to take out the things, you know, the flair. Great dialogue, you know, has its own style, you know. Each writer can have its own style. And then each character in a screenplay, if you're doing it well, will have their own voice. And so those are things you don't want to take out. But what you do want to take out is just extra words and things that don't need to be there. And we've done a little bit of that in class where we just go through, and Danny did a little bit here, you know, where we had, let me just find simple things, but I'm going to keep pounding away at this because I feel like it really helps a lot. On page 5, top or about a third of the way down, Calvin says, you weren't around last year, were you at a different college? Andrea says, yeah, I transferred from a state school once my grades were good enough to get accepted into Ben Lomond. I scratched out yeah because it doesn't need to be there, right? Because if she just says, I transferred from a state school, or I transferred from a state school once my grades were good enough to get accepted into Ben Lomond, obviously it's yeah. So same thing a little bit farther down, Calvin says, really? That sounds pretty sweet. I took out really where he just says, that sounds pretty sweet. What kind of scholarship did you get? Any little extra words that don't help, and you'll be surprised how much it sharpens and how much impact fewer words will have. The dialogue will be so much stronger the fewer words are in it. The more extra words you lay on it, the fatter it gets, the just less interesting it is. We like you know, we like it direct. We like to just get the information, move on, and we want to see this little animal crawl down somebody's throat. So, great. What else can I tell you about shortening stuff? That's, and a lot of it's going to come in time. My first scripts, because I did come from writing fiction, were very heavy in description. Now I'm quite the opposite. You know, I just like to blow it along. And now it's reversed. I think I was telling Danny or one of you, it's interesting when I sent a short story into an editor of an anthology recently, and he said to me, he was like, "Man, you're right. Your fiction is so lean." He goes, "I love how everything just moves along." And I just accepted the compliment, but afterwards I thought it's interesting because at first my screenwriting was overly influenced by writing fiction. It was too heavy. It was too much. But I learned, and now when I've returned, I didn't write fiction for years. Now that I've returned back to it, now I've taken what I've learned in screenwriting, and my fiction is so much more direct now. It's just like, bam, let's get to it. Let's move along. Let's, you know, and it certainly isn't hurting anything. You know, certainly, it's certainly an improvement. Great. Other questions, concerns? Yeah.
If we finish our script by next week, what address do we send it to?
Address. Thank you. Send it to P.O. Box. P.O. Box 1650, Salt Lake City, Utah 84110.
One more time.
P.O. Box 1650, Salt Lake City 84110. Right. And I would encourage you to take advantage of that even if you haven't finished the draft. Just send me what you've got. Just recognize that I won't be able to follow up and, you know, afterwards and read more and all that kind of stuff. At least I can't commit to that. You know, I don't know what my schedule is going to be like in a few months, but I hope I'm way too busy to be doing that. But in the next week, send me what you've got, and then I'll send it back to you, and probably I'll be able to call you on the phone and talk about the notes and answer any questions that you have. And I really want you to keep going. Yeah.
We got a question from Eli. It says, related to my FB post, if the script isn't coming together by the 5th draft, should we keep it at all or just ditch it all together?
If you feel like the script isn't coming together by your 5th draft, have a reading. You may be suffering from a lack of confidence, and you may actually have something that's working, or during the reading, you may figure it out. You may figure out something. This has happened to me so many times where I'll have an epiphany. It might, you know, somebody may make a comment that isn't even logically related to the epiphany that I have, but for whatever reason, I'll make some connection and I'll realize, oh, whoa, wait a minute. I've had things that I didn't realize I had themes running through, you know, one of my scripts I didn't even realize were there. You know, I was just writing and I just thought it was cool, but it wasn't until I had it read in front of a group that I was like, oh, fuck, this is actually deeper than I thought. I thought I was just writing this fun script, and it turns out that I was, you know, concerned about something I didn't even consciously recognize. I had a writing teacher, and actually he was an acting teacher in high school, where I was bitching one day because I'd just come from a creative writing class, a really pretentious creative writing class, high school creative writing class. It was incredibly pretentious, taught by a pretentious lady, and they were going on about, I can't remember which writer it was, but somebody, and they were just going on and on about the different layers and the levels and what he meant, and I'm sitting there as someone who had just started writing, but I could tell that this was just 8 layers of bullshit, you know, and I was just like, there's no way, this guy's just writing a story. He didn't mean to be, you know, bringing this into it. It didn't mean that at all. He was just writing a story. And I went and I was bitching at my acting teacher, saying this, and he said something interesting. He goes, well, sometimes writers, when they don't understand what they're writing. He goes, they write something and they don't understand what's in it. And he was right, you know. And it's like, and I've noticed that from my own writing. I'll write something and I'll think, and you'll notice it sometimes. Somebody will write a, you know, a script, a short story or whatever, and you'll suddenly realize this guy's a misogynist son of a bitch, you know, or this guy's. I mean, sometimes things will come out, you know, that we just go, ah. I mean, I've done it where it's like, oh, I should take a look at that because, you know, I don't really think that way, do I? And so have a reading, stage a reading, and don't give up on it. You know, after the reading, if everybody agrees, and be sure to have the reading with writers or with people who will give good, honest feedback and will follow the model that we've established here, where the writer doesn't talk and everyone says positive things as well as, you know, constructively critical things. And after the reading, you know, have a good drink, have a bottle of wine, and the next day, then you can decide whether you think it's time to start on another script or not. Worst case scenario, you don't see anything there, put it on a shelf, start something else. Maybe a few years down the line, something will click and you'll go back to it and you'll realize what's missing or how to fix it or whatever. But the important thing to realize is no matter what happens, it's not a wasted effort because you've learned an enormous amount. And all of you, your second scripts are going to be, you know, so much better. Your third scripts are going to be so much better than what you're writing now. And so don't get discouraged. People have this feeling that writers are just born, and it's not true. I mean, it's true to a certain extent where people either have the talent, have some natural talent for writing or communicating, but nobody's born, you know, just automatically brilliant. It's a craft, and so you have to learn the craft. You have to learn, and none of you are, you know, all of you have natural talent, so we don't even have to talk about that. But just keep in mind, it's a craft. You're not going to be great right out of the gate. You know, it might take you a few scripts to turn into so that everybody else can see the genius that you are, you know, that you know you are, but you can't prove it yet. But if you keep working, you'll be able to prove it. So, okay, next question.
A couple of clarifications. Thanks for explaining about the mores and continued. I had turned all that off in my software, but that was based on something that you had said earlier. Had someone used it to continue action instead of?
You'll see, as you see more scripts, you'll see this terrible, where it's like on the bottom of every page, it'll say more, more, more. As if you don't know simply by the fact that there's another fucking page afterwards.
It'll say continue.
You know?
Down here in the bottom right corner, it'll say
continue. It'll say continued
and then
down
up here in
there.
the top left corner, it'll be...
For description
yeah,
stuff?
Yeah, no, it's just right up here in the top.
Yeah.
So for dialogue, when dialogue
turn it
breaks a
on.
page, that should be on. So does the software toggle down to that level? That's no
Yes.
different. Okay.
Yeah.
Second clarification, that 3-act structure. I think I've talked about it before, but I still have a question. The 3-act structure, the second act is twice as long as the first and third, but did I overhear something about maybe in a film they could maybe be more like equal parts, or?
Well, yes. It's more of a, especially when we're talking about the 3-act structure, this is a guideline. Again, it's not a rule. Yeah. And I really don't want you to get locked into this page thing that, you know, Sid Field and all these other so-called, you know, experts talk about, because again, all these, and be aware of this. You're all going to go out. You're all going to you'll be exposed. You'll probably read some screenwriting books. You're going to read some stuff, and hopefully you'll be able to use what we've learned to kind of sense this, like, well, that could be helpful, but that's bullshit, you know. And one of the things, just be aware, you know, when somebody goes out and they start selling their method of screenwriting, you know, they'll pick the films, the big successful films that everybody knows about that happen to coincide and follow their model. And then they'll say, look, see, you know, Back to the Future, look, Jaws, look this. And they'll say, see? And then they'll keep going back to these films and saying, look, see, I'm right because Casablanca did this. See, I'm right because Lord of the Rings did this. But just take that moment to stop and say, okay, now let's talk about successful, famous films that absolutely do not do that, you know, that completely violate that rule. And you're going to have a much longer list of that. So that's the thing that, you know, we talked about it in the very first class. This is an art form. It's not, we're not manufacturing a chair. We're not manufacturing a watch. You know, it's not like you go through and just put all the pieces together and at the end you have this thing that's just like 100,000 other things. This is an art form. This is something that evolves, that grows, that creates its own life, and so that's why we approached our class the way that we did. I didn't want to sit down and start giving you rules and having you taking notes. It was like, start writing. You know, just start writing. And it's true. You guys know. We all know stories. We know it. We know how to tell a story. And so, you know, get the story out. Just lay it out there. And most of the things that some professor would spend an entire year, 3 years, you take a fucking, you know, college degree where for 4 years they're going to talk about the stuff that it's such a waste of time, you know, because most of this stuff you're going to know. You might not know what the words are for them. You know, you might not be able to write a paper and say, you know, blah, 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 and use the vocabulary and the academic vocabulary, but you're going to know. I mean, when it comes right down to it, it's like, you know, I'm not hooked. You know, these characters are boring. You know, the story isn't interesting. You know, nothing happens. We're at page 30 and nothing happens. I mean, these are just straightforward ways of talking, and yet these are the real problems of screenplays. So, getting back to structure. Yeah, so, you know, as we've talked, just keep it in mind. Again, after you've got your story out there, then go back and look and say, and you know, overall length, 120 is a long script. You're going to have a hard time justifying more than that. But if it's, you know, the complete history of the Egyptians, you might have to do that. You know, 18 generations of Egyptian pharaohs. But generally speaking, you know, you want to keep it somewhere 85 to 105, 110, somewhere in there. You got it. That's a good length for a film. Now, within that framework, yeah, by about page 30, that needs to be your end of the first act, you know? Unless it doesn't. That, you know, that's something to look at your story and say, okay, if there's no problem to it, if for whatever reason, because of the way that you're doing it, the approach, the dialogue, the characters, what's happening, if we get to page 30 and there's not that we're going to war moment, but it's working, then don't fuck with it, you know? Then it's like, okay, but if it's not working, then you say, well, let's bring in some classical wisdom here. So by, you know, classically speaking, by about page 30, we should have our we're going to war moment. If I have that, is it going to help it? Great. If it does, great. You know, work it that way so it does, and it might just bring it alive. It might, you know, it might just bring it alive. And then I always say, you know, I push more for like the 30. I like the first act 30 pages, second act about 30 pages, and the last act about 30 pages, because of where the climax falls. That's for me. A lot of, you know, in fiction and in playwriting, a lot of times, you know, they'll talk about the second act being the body, and that being longer, you know, it being twice as long, being 60 pages or whatever. I don't know. For me, it feels a little long. But yeah, I mean, it's correct. I wouldn't, if some teacher was teaching that, you know, that you need a longer second act, I'd be like, all right, whatever, it doesn't matter. But again, it's something you need to look at in your script. You know, look at it in your script. I tend to feel like you just gotta keep your story progressing. You gotta keep it moving, and so if that means putting, you know, maybe in your weird, crazy script, you know, maybe what happens is your going to war moment happens at page 45, but it doesn't matter because it's working, and then your second act is 10 pages long, you know. maybe that works, you know? Maybe that, think about Psycho, you know, I watched that not too long ago again, and I was just I'm still absolutely amazed by this movie, because, you know, if somebody had written that script in a college class and said, here, professor, this is my script for Psycho, professor would have been like, this is stupid, you know, you can't have your main character get killed off halfway through the movie, you know, and then now the bad guy is the main character, and it's just, but because he did it that way, you know, and because no one was expecting that, because they'd never seen a movie where the main character, this beautiful woman that you're following and you're worried about, suddenly she takes a shower and, what? I mean, it freaked everyone out. And that was so much more effective than, you know, okay, here's the end of Act 1, here's the end of Act 2. Instead, he just kind of went, blah, you know, and so we're going to totally change this, and the audience is going to be totally surprised and unmoored, and they're not going to know where this is going, and that's exactly what happened. So don't get too hung up on it. And just remember, you know, you have to have a we're going to war moment. You don't have to have it. I hate talking about this, because it gets into these rules that I really resist, because again, your movie can be so totally Tarkovsky. You know, you can do a movie that's so Andrei Tarkovsky. He clued into something that was just fascinating. If you ever want to bore yourself to tears, but possibly, you know, change the way you see cinema forever, watch an Andrei Tarkovsky movie. Watch Stalker, or what's the one that they remade, Soderbergh, what's that? Solaris, yeah. Or Andrei Rublev's. It's got images that'll never leave my mind. But the first time I saw it, I was totally bored. It was like, I don't understand. This is like, it's just, nothing's happening. There's no we're going to war moment. There's no, it's not a story and who's the main character. And, but I mean, you know, I was like, damn, I'm just making myself watch this, because I watch movies. I've only walked out of one movie in my life.
What was it?
It was Ruskies in the 80s. And it was a brilliant moment, because I was with my wife, and it was the stupidest movie. I think it was Ruskies. The kids are going to their dads, or I don't know, it's some stupid shit, you know, and these kids all going to go fight the Russians, and anyway, I just had enough. It was like 30 minutes into it, and I was just like, this is, and the kids were together, and Kevin Dillon was in it, and they're talking about what they're going to do, and I turned to my wife, and I was like, let's just go, let's get out of here. So as we're standing up, Kevin Dillon's character says, I'm out of here. And so I had this perfect opportunity, and so out loud, so all the theater could hear me, I was like, me too! And it's the only time I've walked out of a movie.
Red Dawn?
Red Dawn, that's what it was, Red Dawn, okay.
It sounds like Red Dawn.
Yeah. Anyway.
You should sit down and watch the remake,
I'm sure it's, yeah. But so Tarkovsky, but what he clued into is, well, after I saw the movie, and then the images kept sticking with me, and then I went back and watched it again. I mean, that's how, you know, interesting the film was. It's like, I hate this movie, it's boring, it's stupid. I don't want to watch it again. And these images, and then it started to get inside me, and it was just like, what is this? And so I went and I studied, you know, I found Tarkovsky had a kind of a philosophy of film, so I was reading about and he had this whole belief that at the dawn of film, basically what happened was the American business interests, the entertainment industry that was created, grabbed this art form and defined what it was going to be, and they started it down a certain path, which was going to be, you know, there's the great train robbery. It's like, oh, a robbery story, and it grew up, and they started to pull from plays, you know, from stage plays, and it became this one thing. And that's where we are, you know, right now. We're just following the same path of narrative film, of characters, main character. But Tarkovsky, he recognized that early on is like, instead of going this way, it very well could have gone in another way, and maybe maybe we don't even understand the potential and the nature of cinema because we're just so programmed and locked into this one way of seeing it. And so what he was trying to do with his films was to discover what the true nature of cinema is, of images, putting images together. And unfortunately he only made about 7 films before he died, but he was actually taking film in a different direction. And it's fascinating. So that's why you can't really say, it's like a movie can completely violate every law of narrative, of drama, of everything, you know, all the technical, everything that we consider a rule is not a rule, it's just the way that we've standardized the movie storytelling experience. But you may see it a different way, you know, and you may say, wait a minute, these are just images. What can I do with images that nobody else has done with images? And maybe you're going to come up with something that's totally new, and just keep that in mind. So again, as we talked about the ways to approach the rewrites and the writing of a script, remember, just get it out. After it's out, then look at it and diagnose it. You know, don't approach it, don't try to be building it and anticipating everything that can go wrong with the baby before the baby's born. You know, let the baby be born and then look at the baby and say, oh, okay, we need to, you know, that 6th finger, we got to get rid of that. You know, that 3rd testicle, it's interesting, but let's get rid of that, you know. And that's the way you got to treat your script, you know. Don't worry about it until it's born, until you've got that first draft. And then look at it and make it the best you can, and then look at it and say, okay, classically, professors would say that at about page 30, this has to happen. Does it happen in my script? If it doesn't, would it help it if I do that? If it does, do that, et cetera, et cetera. Go through everything that we've taught in class. But until that, don't get too hung up about it. Because you may have something that absolutely works, and then you'll create some screenwriting guru who's going to say, look, this is the way to do it. There's no other way. This is the way, based on your work, you know? You're right. Okay. Yeah.
One thing that really helped for me, and this kind of goes back to Joan's problem, and I had a very similar problem, and I am not a writer. I took this class because I really want to learn more, and I'm actually just an avid movie lover, and I really want, and I love it. I've loved every second of this class, and for me, like, I was really focused in on this, all these details, and you know what this idea of a movie could be. But for me, like, I couldn't just sit down and write. I mean, for me, it really couldn't. I'm more of a planner, so I actually storyboarded. I mean, I actually wrote out Act 1, Act 2. I mean, I didn't write them out. I put it on a whiteboard actually at my office. With a whiteboard, I went there and I wrote out, like, opening scene or the hook, which I mentioned I went back and changed or added a completely different scene later. But you know, I actually storyboarded what are some of the main points of the story, how could this story go, and you know, potential scenes and where all they could work, and what's the climax, and what's the, you know, all these things. And then I actually went through and then wrote individual scenes, you know.
Right.
And I mean, maybe and then of course I've gone back and I've fixed some of the flow of the whole story, but you know, for me, that was a big part of really organizing my ideas,
Right.
and storyboarding everything and say, okay, how could this work, you know,
Right.
and actually go scene by scene, act by act,
Right.
without writing, you know, on Screenwriter, you know, without writing the actual script, was just storyboarding, and that really helped for me a lot.
Right. Now, this you know, makes me think of something that's really important. Talking about film as an art form, screenwriting as an art form, it's not going to be the same. There's no answer, because I've written how many, like 30 some scripts now. It's never been the same. The process is never the same. You know, each project kind of dictates its own, the way you're going to have to approach it. And so that's another reason. It's like I strongly resist. My first script I wrote that way because I was reading that stupid book and I thought, oh, that's how you do it. You put this thing up there, and I did it, and it didn't work for me. You know, it was like, for me, it was just like filling in the blanks, just sucked the life out of it. And But, okay, that being said, so I resisted that. I was like, this is bullshit. I'm never doing that again. This is the best way to, and I agree. The best way to write a bad script is that way. However, I got hired once to do a script, and I had to turn it around really fast. You know, I had like 3 weeks to turn it around, and it was just a, you know, action thing. And it was like, and so and it didn't, you know, it was just the producers, they just wanted this action movie by the numbers. Here's the thing, you know, we have to have this black guy, we have to have this white guy, you know, it has to happen in Singapore or wherever, and it's like, this is what has to happen. And so I just realized this time, then I went to the store, got the index cards, and I did exactly that. You know, it was like, okay, so this is I put a list up, you know, here are the good guys, here's the main characters, the 2 guys, here are the, you know, supporting characters that are related to them, these are the bad guys, and I wrote them out. And then I went along and I just did that, you know, it's like, okay, so this is going to be the whole story, which means about right here this should happen, about right here this should happen, and I cranked through it, and I did it, and it turned out to be okay, you know, it was like, it was entertaining, just genre piece, nothing, you know, not something I'd want to show as, look what I did, you know, but I delivered it, they were happy, and I got paid, so, but that's not, you know, that's not the way that I generally work, you know. So, and it's hard to even say how I generally work because, like I said, each idea is going to be different. Each circumstance is going to be different.
I kind of bounced some ideas off of a good friend of mine Monday night, just to kind of get me rolling again and get some ideas flowing. And he brought up an interesting point. He says, you know, not every script has to change the world. You know, how many movies out there are really considered transformative? It's not, you're not breaking a whole lot of new ground. It's more of an amalgamation of everything you are and have learned and experienced in your life that you're kind of channeling into a story. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was kind of an interesting take on it. That, you know, I think a lot of, especially new writers, feel like they have to come up with something completely original.
Right.
And that's I don't know if that's even possible anymore.
Right.
I don't know, what do you think of that?
Well, it makes me think about, there's one thing I hate, and I hate it. It's something that's rampant here in this little, there's not much of a professional filmmaking community in Utah. There's like a few people who actually make their living making films or working in the industry like that. And most of them are like people trying to be, you know, so it's kind of like an amateur thing that sometimes they get paid, but mostly it's an amateur group. But when they do get paid, it's interesting, the attitude that just drives me nuts, and it is, they don't seem to care what movie they make. You know, they don't seem to care what script they write. They just want to be making a movie, you know? And that's something that, you know, to me, because I recognize the work that has to go into it, the sacrifice, you know, it could be 5 years or more. You know, I might be I might be digging through the penny dish for groceries because I put everything into the movie, and I may, after all of that, it may not work. And so, to me, I don't understand that attitude at all, and it seems like this lack of respect for the art form, for the craft, for film. And so it's a balancing act. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you get a job, make whatever movie they want you to make, you know. But what keeps you going, you know, what keeps you growing, what wakes you up in the morning, and what gets you through the difficulty of the writing, of the directing, the producing, the marketing, is if it's a project that you're passionate about, you know, that it's not just another project, and it may not be a movie that changes the world or that, you know, wins all the Academy Awards, but for whatever reason, this is a movie that you know, that you're going to force into being, you know, and that's what it is. There's nobody, I very seldom find filmmakers who have a project that they're going to force into being, that they believe in it that much. Usually it's, oh, ooh, we're going to do this movie. Oh, nobody's seen it. Okay, what are we doing? And then they run out. Oh, we're going to do that movie. No, oh yeah, we're going to do that movie. And that's and that's why they never get a fucking thing done, is because, you know, there's not one thing that they're going to, for hell or high water, they're going to get this done. And there's different phases. So that's why, you know, choose a project that's going to, hell or high water, you're going to get this script done. You know, don't get too far ahead of yourselves. Maybe don't think too much about selling it. Don't think, but it's like you're going to get the script done and it's going to be good. You know, that's what you got to be. It's like, and it may take 12 drafts, but you're going to, whatever it takes, you're going to do it, and it's going to be good. You know, and at that point, you know, then what happens? But the passion for it, you know.
Is there something that people that you do script, when someone asks you script to fix,
Yeah.
is there something in common these fixes need? Like what do you see when, what do you have to undo when these scripts come to you?
You know, the
learn from?
thing that I have seen the most is there are very few experienced screenwriters out there. Most of the scripts that I get sent to fix are just bad. I mean, they're just scripts that well, that's the other thing about, and I see it in this, and I'm sure it's everywhere, but you know, it's this idea, it's like, oh, let's make a movie, and you know, he took a screenwriting class, let's have him write the script, you know, or he can kind of write, you know, his text, he always spells out whole words in his text, let's let him write the script. There seems to be this idea that, you know, this lack of respect for, I had one of the local the people, they make shitty films constantly. And it's like, they came to me one time, they're like, will you write a script for us? And I quoted them a price, and they were like, no, we're not gonna do it. We can pay this guy $3,000 to do it. And it's like, well, yeah, and you'll keep getting the shit that you're getting. And that's what they did, you know? And, because I wouldn't lower my price. And that's what I see more than anything. It's like people who don't, these scripts that, you know, there's so much activity in the business of people, you know, wanting good projects and wanting to produce good projects, that they find something that it's like, and they recognize it's like, well, but in there somewhere there's a concept, or this role, maybe, you know, Will Smith will want to play this guy. It's kind of like a Will Smith thing. Or there's some just, it's like, that seems like a movie that would do really well. And so they just say, yeah, we know the script sucks, but there's something here, and we have to have a project of some kind, so this is what we're going to work with. And then they send it to me and say, can you make, I was looking for this email right before, and I couldn't find it. But this last week, the guy that I was telling you about, the Killer Deer movie, and the original writer went back and fucked it all up, you know, and sent it to the producer, and he was ranting about, and when he wrote back to the guy, he sent me a copy of the thing, and he's like, why can't you just follow Richard's formatting? You know, and it was like so cool to read that, because and he said, he goes, I can't send this, I can't put my name on this and send it out to people. And so now they're asking me to go back and fix, because the guy just doesn't even, he doesn't even comprehend how to format a script. And so now I'm going to make a little extra money going in and just, you know, fixing the formatting.
How is that? He sees it on the page, how you've done it. How difficult is it to, I guess really difficult for him.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I encounter more than anything, is the lack of understanding that it is a craft, and that there are people who have honed their craft and are good at it, you know, and so and it's nice, because now I've got a few producers, established producers, who I'm their go-to guy now, and it's because they know it's like, okay, send it to Richard, and 4 weeks from now we'll have something that we can actually send out and shoot, yeah. And that's a nice place to be, but it's dumbfounding to me to, very seldom do they send me a script that's even formatted close to correctly, and they're all, obviously, you know, people can't fucking spell, they can't fucking write a sentence, you know, and you're just like, these people are trying to play in the big leagues, you know, they're trying to play in the big leagues, and they're little leaguers, you know. And that's why I've tried to pound it into you guys about formatting, you know, about, you know, professional presentation, and because it's huge, it's absolutely huge. that's why I wanted to show you the email, so you would see that this, this guy just was going off saying, I'm not going to send this, I can't send this out looking like this. So now I get to go in and fix it. Yeah, but that's it. So once you've written 3 scripts, what did we say, the percentile? I mean, at that point, you're in the top 10 percentile of screenwriters, because most scripts that I get are the first or second scripts that someone's ever written, and they didn't take it very seriously, and they weren't very good writers to begin with, So if you take it seriously and you write 3 scripts, now you're in the top 10% of script writers, That should be encouraging. That should be really encouraging. And I swear to you, I promise you, that if you have a properly formatted script that's well written, good dialogue, good characters, and an interesting concept, you are so far ahead of the game, and a real producer is gonna recognize that and just be like, wow, because it's going to stand out simply because it's professional, because there's so much unprofessional shit out there.
What about shorts? You had us write a short at the beginning.
Yeah.
I've never even thought of what a short would do.
Well, we're in the heyday of shorts. We're in the golden age of shorts now. Used to be, well, the internet's full of short films now. I mean, I watch how many a week. You don't think of them as short films because you just think of it as some funny thing, so you click on a college humor thing, or you click on something and you watch a 4-minute film, and you laugh, and then you're like, go on to something else. That's a short film, and it used to be people would make short films, people would see them in festivals, and that's about it, Now, you can make a short film and millions of people, hundreds of millions of people can see it. So that's why I feel like it's huge. A lot of people now, the ADHD we're talking about, it's like getting some people to sit down and watch a 90-minute movie is like they're crawling, their brains have been trained to, they can't concentrate on one thing for that long. So I think it's going more and more towards that, and I think now, whereas it wasn't possible in the past, you can make a good living if you can crank out entertaining, popular shorts that get widely circulated. You can actually make a good living at it, So.
There's a guy who directed The Bye Bye Man, which I hear was terrible. He did a 2-minute short with that concept, and some producer found that and said, hey, let's make a feature out of this. It's rare, but that kind of thing does happen. Yeah,
it does. Music videos are short films. So many directors came from music videos, a person who's made a couple of really great music videos or a couple of really great little shorts can bullshit his way into anything, because I mean, if you can make a short film that's 5 minutes long that looks top-notch, professional, it's entertaining, it's engaging, you could bullshit your way into a feature easily, because you can say, look what I did. Look, I did it. Give me money to make a long one. Big movies, just 12 of these put together. So, yeah.
What is the best way to, research a period piece? My ADHD is shifting again, and I'm actually now honing in on something that would be set somewhere around the 20s or the 30s.
Well.
So dialogue and that's where I'm going to struggle, is dialogue. Words, they're obviously not going to say some of the words we say now.
But look at short stories that were published in that time period. F. Scott Fitzgerald was writing in the 20s and 30s. Some dialogue there is very unique to the time period. But find short stories. There are tons of magazines published in the 20s and 30s. Find their short stories and see how they talked. That's a great idea.
That'd be great.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, so you got a week. You got 1 week and about 3 hours to get me your work. And I want to say what a pleasure it's been. It's great. It's been a different experience this time because we've got the online, the experience, which makes it a little less personal, kind of ties me down to one place. Usually I'd be pacing, I'd be back and forth to the tables, and it would be a little more of a community experience. But we got through it, we did it, we got the information out there. And you know, some of you, life intervened and you weren't able to, you know, get the writing done that you wanted. But some of you have really taken the ball and run with it and are really close to having finished screenplays. And that's exciting. That's fantastic, you know. 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, didn't have them, you know. And, or even whatever you've got now, you didn't have it back then. And if there's a few of you that don't really have anything yet, and that makes me a little sad, but you do have the information, and you do have I'm going to leave these classes up and available only to us, probably for a year. You should have plenty of time within a year if you're going to use them, you know, if you're going to use it. After that, I might, you know, edit them and do something with them, but but don't worry about that. I'm never going to, I won't use your work in any kind of or when we read your work here, it's never going to go anywhere else. So in any future, if there's a video incarnation of this class, your work will not be included in it. It'll just be the information. So don't worry about that. And I won't even, if I do choose to have one of your questions that you were given on camera, I'll ask you first if it's okay to do it. I won't just do it without permission. But great. Well, the exciting thing for me is I'm starting a really fun chapter in my life, and I've got a script that I've got to finish because I'm going to be making it soon, and I've got to finish it. So I'm going into a really intense writing period of my own, and so this was fantastic for me. It helps remind me so that I'll be doing the same thing that you guys are doing, and I'll just be getting it out there, and then I'll be looking at it and thinking about everything that we've talked about in class and seeing if that'll make it better. And then I'm going to have a reading, and if any of you want to participate in the reading of that script, you're welcome to come. I'll post it in the group, and that'll be fun. You'll get to see what your teacher is currently doing, right? So hopefully I'll blow you away. Yeah.
Whatever happened to that movie you were shooting, that Boys in the Bar or something?
Boys at the Bar.
Something like that.
Yeah, I just forgot about it. I don't care. No, we're finishing it. Everything's done now except for the final color correction and the end titles. So we just got to get that finished and have a premiere. So you'll also know about that. I'll let you know so you guys can come out to the premiere. But you see that's an interesting, I'm glad you brought that up, because that violates every, that was structurally
Non-existent.
yeah. But we did something really cool that I remember when we were in class, you know, because I said, this is what we're going to do. I didn't say this is what we want to do. I was like, this is what we're going to do. And I remember somebody saying, is it going to work? And I was like, I don't know, but we're going to do it. You know, we're going to try. And it
was what, 40 pages? And the rest
35 pages, and then the rest was improvised. And it was dangerous, and it shouldn't have worked, and it did. But the interesting thing, even with all that free-form, wild stuff, see, this is why it's very different, because up until, and the movie lasts 86 minutes. But I would say right up until about 80 minutes, you don't really know what the story was, you know? It's like you're just thinking, is that all it was? And then in just that last few minutes of the film, something happens that you realize that you were watching something happen that you didn't realize you were watching happen, and then it becomes much more of a, this is a sweet movie. This is a romantic, sweet movie. And it was really cool, you know, and it violates every rule, just absolutely every rule. And it still works. So I think it works. I guess we're going to find out if it works, right? But yeah, Boys at the Bar, coming soon to one theater near you. All right, gang, this has been a blast. Really looking forward to reading your stuff, and really looking forward to going to your premieres. And I want a little special thanks in the credits. Give me a little special thanks, and a free popcorn. I'll be happy. Yeah. Okay, great. Any more questions?
Oh no, everyone was just saying thanks.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
One more
Yeah.
question. So I guess we'll see you next summer for the next class.
Nope, no more classes.
Well, thank you.
People think I'm bullshitting, but no more classes. All right.
I promise in my Oscar acceptance speech, I'm going to mention you.
All right, I'll hold you to that. I'll hold you to that. All right, happy writing.
I have a cigar for you.
You
I didn't give you
do?
the box because I wanted to keep it. I got it in the
Oh.
Dominican Republic. But you can have one of them.
Well, thank you.
Let me dispose that for you.
Oh no,
I don't know how
I haven't given up.
good or bad it is, but
No, you just swing the box for the time being.
Well,
So you get it.
but I do have a humidor, and it will go in there until I'm ready to smoke it. So good. Thank you.
thank you.
Rachel. Thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It met every expectation I had for it. I knew I wasn't going to write anything, but it inspired me, and
Good.
that's all I wanted out of it. So.
Well, great. All right.